really check your history and yourself.
Stop playing politics with my Punanny. Stop playing politics with my Punanny. Hey, 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 Republicans. I see you called on your fellow man. All dicks and no nuts. Then you rush to call me a slut. I'm standing up for what is mine. Call me the rib, but I'm really the spine of this whole great nation. Ain't gonna put me back on the plantation. No, stop playing politics with my Punanny.
Hey everyone, greetings. Welcome to another episode of Punanny Politixxx. Wow, it is episode 8. Whew. We are getting closer and closer and closer to the election. I'm kind of glad though, because I'm like really like ready to just be like on the other side of all this and just keep this thing moving. But welcome to episode 8 of Punanny Politixxx. It is the new moon in Libra, everybody. And I think we got one more night of Libra because I think the next show's on the 22nd and I believe Scorpio happens on the 23rd. So we're going to get one more fabulous show inside this moon of Libra, or this sign, I should say, of Libra. So shout out to all my Libras in the building. And tonight on our Libra video, I'm going to be giving a lot of love to my personal Libra superstar friends. You know, I have bunches of Libra fabulous folks in my life. So you'll see their faces tonight on the new moon video. So yes, we're going to get into it. So where do we begin? You know, like I said, I feel like every time I like turn, you know, like I'll say goodnight on one show and then like something happens like almost immediately. I don't know if it was quite like that this time, but kind of. So the first thing on the agenda or to talk about tonight, as most of you know, and some of you are in these states, early voting has started in a lot of these southern states. So, you know, the first, I think, state that I heard about early voting starting was Georgia. So, and as we all know, Georgia is full of shenanigans. And here we see that is the line in Georgia, or one of the lines in Georgia. I can't even say it's, you know, it's the line. It's just one of the lines. That's for early voting in Georgia. And as y'all know, of course, I mean, I shouldn't say of course. I mean, it's terrible to say that, but we know what's going on in Georgia. And there's all kind of shenanigans going on down there. And they were talking, you know, people were waiting 8 hours, 11 hours, you know, to vote, which is just, you know, it's insane. And, you know, just real talk, it's just complete fuckery. I just have to be real about that. That's just outrageous. But, you know, kudos to folks who are out there, you know, exercising their right to vote, like waiting, people, you know, with your chairs, with your cooler, whatever. And it's just like I said, you know, I've been saying that early, you know, since early when I started this show, when we were telling people, or I've been telling people, or, you know, to prepare to vote, you know, plan, because it's things like that. And, you know, the state of Georgia, they were saying, you know, they were trying to say that things were so slow because of the numbers, but of course they were having technical difficulties, you know, and so, you know, who knows? Because we know that governor down there is, you know, full of shenanigans. We know this. Hello. And, you know, the state of Texas ain't much better. In Texas, in a lot of counties right now, one box to drop ballots for the whole county. Counties that are like really huge. Like, it's not like a thing where like, oh, I just got to go like 5 miles to get this box, but it doesn't even matter. Whole county. Can you imagine if there was one box to drop in the whole Kings County in Brooklyn? Like, let's just think about that for a second. Like, that's ridiculous. So the state and the local government, the state and the federal government in Texas are going back and forth because a state judge has said, no, it's crazy, unconstitutional to have one ballot box, you know, a place where people can drop their ballots for absentee ballots early, one box. And then the federal government is jumping in, trying to talk about, oh, no, it's not unconstitutional, da, 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 da. In a pandemic, people, let's get real. let's get real. There's a whole lot of shenanigans going on out here. So my folks that are out here in these southern states, oh shoot, some of these northern states, hello, Ohio. But wherever you are, if you're in these states that are swing states and you know that they're going to be up to some things, it's like, really plan, because they're doing their level best. And so that's why I always say, when folks say their vote doesn't count, if your vote didn't count, they wouldn't be working so hard to get you not to do it or, not to count yours. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, really, know what's going on. So with that in mind, voting, here are my voting deadlines that are coming up. So if you have not registered to vote, a lot of states are already done with registration, but upcoming states, for deadline dates, California, Illinois, Alabama, Maine, Michigan, Pennsylvania, South Dakota, and Wyoming, y'all are coming up inside this week. So, and a few others too. I think New Hampshire might be in there. But just check it out. If you are in one of these states, you haven't registered to vote, or your cousins haven't registered to vote, you still have time. So get out there, do what you can, make it happen. Also, if you're thinking about requesting a mail-in ballot, a lot of these states, most states, you still have time. In fact, most of these states, you have up until about the 23rd, 24th or later, except for I see Missouri is the 21st and Nevada's the 20th. But you can see here on this list, just take a moment. If you find your state, if you're thinking about requesting a mail-in ballot, these are your deadlines. So know it, get into it. And then early voting. So early voting, as I said, has begun in some states already. If it has not begun in your state, you can just check the list here. You can see when early voting starts in your state. And if you want to do that instead of being, on that line on November 3rd, get into it. I always say, hey, why not? If you have the time and you can do early voting, if it, makes sense, then, do it, because then you'll be done, out of the way. You can sit back and have a cocktail on 3rd. You know what I'm saying? So you can do that. So the next thing, last week, we talked about a contract with Black America. Oh, there's my boy Cube. Well, as y'all know, or maybe you don't know, who knows, there has been some controversy with the contract. I wrote down a lot of things, to talk about with regard to this. But I think I'm going to sort of keep it to a couple of things, because there's so much chatter. There's so much, talk about, what it is and what it ain't, what he did do and what he didn't do, what he should have done, all these kind of things. And I think almost I want to talk less about him and more about, this moment that we're in right now. So I'll say this, quickly about just quickly about this platinum plan and okay, first of all, everybody's leaning on this $500 billion number, but you know what? That money is not going to Black people. But my thing is, none of this is okay. Let me even stop. I'm rewinding. Okay, this administration does not care about Black people. Okay, can we just get that clear right now? This administration does not care about Black people. And I'm not talking about Republicans in general. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the powers that be that are right now in these positions. These people do not care about Black people. I don't care if they're throwing out numbers, billions, trillions. Do not fall for the okie doke, my people. And like I said, this is not about just saying bad stuff about Republicans or whatever. I could do that. This is really just about this particular administration. So there's nothing, that these people can say that are going to make me believe that they have my people's best interests at heart. I don't care what number you are throwing out there. Okay. And that's not to say that I am all gung-ho about the other side either. Okay, we all know what this is. We know what this is. right now, this election is about voting for your life. This is not about voting for a party. This is about getting out of a pandemic. This is about, making sure that this whole world, I hate to be dramatic, but doesn't just, poof, blow up, disintegrate, da, da, da. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're not going back, but we would like to go forward. But the folks that are currently in power want us to go back. Okay, they want us to go back. So let's just get clear about that. So I know I've ranted a little bit. I don't really do that much. But so on the other side of that, and I will say this about Ice Cube. I think that he probably, and I'm this is from me. He's probably came to this notion of creating a contract with Black America with the best intentions, because we need to know as a collective, as best we can, because we're not a monolith, but as best we can, what we would like, what we're moving toward, right? I just think that there are a lot of nuances and things inside of this political system that he just might not really, he's just not really savvy about. So at the end of the day, he really got played. I mean, it'd be nice to say something else, but that's kind of what happened. But that's not to say that it was, that he was coming from this dark, space to begin with. It's like, no, but we need to, yeah. So that's why also I'm just not also about like, oh, let's just cancel Ice Cube. Ice Cube's canceled. I'm not really big on cancel culture to begin with. Not to say that some folks don't need to be, sat in a corner, but I just feel like we're in a time where we need solutions. Like, we need to figure some things out. And if we're not gonna, if it's not gonna be a whole, one contract for everybody, everything, look inside, and as we've been doing, right? Like in your communities, in your smaller, in the, wherever you are, like, start to think for yourself what you would want for yourself. There are a lot of good things that have been put out here. My brother, Dr. Greg Carr talked about creating, political action committees. And that's not new. Like, there's a lot of things out here that people have been working on for quite some time. And I think that was a lot of the beef also that people had with, the contract, and it not really including like things that folks have been out here working on. It kind of like made it seem like nobody had been doing any work, and then poof, here's this contract, right? But, let's like bring it down a little bit. Let's continue to strategize. Let's get past November 3rd. So we can live, y'all. Let's live. I know it sounds really corny sometimes, but like, I really feel like this is what this is all about. Let's get through this so we can live, and live and continue to move forward. We are moving into, as I think it was Roland Martin said, I think we need to start creating what would be considered the third Reconstruction, which hopefully will maybe be like the final, like we can just reconstruct and move forward. But anyway, if you don't know all that I'm talking about, excuse me, if you don't know anything that was happening with Ice Cube or any of that kind of stuff, you can look it up. If you don't want to look it up, don't look it up. All I say is just vote. Just vote. That's all you need to do. You know what I'm saying? So, I got my notes. On to some awesome news. As we are here talking with Vashti about the Colored Girls Museum, a very amazing colored girl, Miss Simone Lee, there she is, was just selected as the first Black woman to be the U.S. representative at the Venice Biennale in 2022, meaning that she will create the American Pavilion at the art fair in 2022. They had to postpone the fair for 2021 due to the pandemic, but former Black artist Martin Puryear, I'm sorry if I said his name wrong, and Mark Bradford represented the U.S. in the past two biennales, respectively. So if you're not familiar, if you're not an art world person and you don't really know what the Venice Biennale is, it is really one of the biggest art fairs in the world, really, biggest, most prestigious art fairs in the world. So the fact that Simone was chosen to represent the U.S. at the American Pavilion is a very big deal. but also at the same time, and okay, and if you're not familiar with Simone Lee's work, definitely go check her out. If you're here in New York, you probably, and you've been on the High Line, you've seen her sculpture on the High Line. It's there, it's gorgeous. Black woman, bust, cornrows, the whole fabulousness. And it's called Brick House. Yeah, Brick House is the piece that's on the High Line. So if you're not familiar, if you got some time, go up on the High Line if you're here in New York City and check out that piece. And you can always Google Simone Lee and check out her work, really representing Black women's folk art to begin with. The stuff that she was doing in the beginning. Of course, people weren't really vibing her at first. Because, well, whatever. Let me not get into, because I could go off on that too. But but kudos to Simone for getting that. I have to say though, it always just rubs me a little weird, like when I'm in 2020 and still talking about Black firsts. I'm like, but I know that's what it's going to be for a while, because we still a lot of places that we haven't been able to penetrate. So kudos, big up to Simone Lee on that. And another big up to another sister in our New York art community. Big love to Rada Blank on her success of her film, The 40-Year-Old Version, that is now on Netflix. If you haven't checked that out, please go check that out. It's a really fabulous film. And Rada's been in this game. She's been doing her numbers for a long time. So bless her on that. And, this is a film for, all of us so-called, late bloomers or people who got stalled. And then, you kind of come back, in the, later on and kind of like kill it. That's what we're all doing, right? I feel like this pandemic is sort of everybody's, pivot. Like, what can I do, or what haven't I done that I wanted to do? It's that moment. So, big love to Rada. If you got Netflix or you got somebody's Netflix password, go in there and check it out. It's a really great film. All right. Yes. So as usual, as I said, we are at the new moon in Libra. So the new moon is always a great time to set new intentions. If there are things, as we talked about, maybe there was something that kind of got stalled, you could restart it, relook at it. It's a nice opportunity to, just get going again. So, of course, we have our new moon in Libra forecast from our, from our moist Fala. And so here is your new moon in Libra forecast.
The super new moon, which occurs on October 16th, maintains and builds upon the rising tensions we have all experienced in the past months. While new moons are in general optimal times for new beginnings, today's new moon feels the influence of both Mercury and Mars in retrograde. It may be more apt on this occasion to power down, restart, and hope for the best. There is in the sky at this moment a configuration known as a T-square. Picture a capital T. At one end of the line, across the top, the sun and moon are unable to fully enjoy their time together as they are in the line of fire of Mars at the opposite end. Meantime, at the bottom of the vertical line in the T, the 2020 stellium of Jupiter, Pluto, and Saturn in Capricorn exerts contentious energy in the direction of all the above-mentioned planets, driving a something's gotta give atmosphere. Some of us may feel like we're being attacked from all sides, although for most of us, this too shall pass. Mercury turned retrograde in Scorpio on Tuesday the 13th, and while most people see Mercury retrogrades as a time of inconvenience, there are blessings to be discovered at this time, especially under the influence of an auspicious transit of Venus, which took place on the eve of the retrograde. The planet of love gave Mercury, the planet of communication, a warm send-off into its retrograde phase. Hold a message of love in your mind to get you through the days ahead, even as Mercury will continue to excavate the territory in search of cold, hard truths. Indeed, this is the time to turn your focus within and do some soul searching. As the new moon finds the sun and moon together in Libra, opposing Mars in Aries, the dilemma lies in balancing your own needs with the needs of another. If you are a yogini, focus on balancing poses, with an inversion or two thrown in for the retrograde planets. Even though this new moon phase is likely to bring challenges in some area of life for each of us, the sun, the true boss of the solar system, is still in Libra for most of the coming week, pushing for equanimity, justice, harmony, and beauty. Don't forget to turn your attention to the wonders of nature as it begins to signal the changing of the seasons. Whether the leaves are turning or spring is springing, there is nothing like the procession of the plant world to remind us that life goes on. Basically, right on time. This new moon forecast was brought to you by Moist Paula at Zodiac Soundtracks. Welcome to the new moon in Libra.
Yes, welcome to the new moon in Libra. So shout out to all my Libra friends. If any of my Libra friends are out there watching, you might have seen your face in there. Big love to my friend, my brother, who I miss dearly. I would see him all the time because we'd be playing music all the time. My brother, Greg Tate. It was his birthday, I think 2 days ago. And my sis, Hanifa Walida, it was her birthday yesterday. So big love to my Libra family. And I hope everyone had great, birthday celebrations. If you've already celebrated your day, I know this year is like so strange in terms of like birthday celebrations. Everybody's on Zoom. In fact, like I'm missing a Zoom party right now for another Libra friend of mine. So big shout out to my Libras. Love y'all. All right. So without further ado, coming to the stage, because everybody comes to the stage, is my girl, the founder and executive director of the Colored Girls Museum, Vashti Dubois. Yay! Oh no, I can't hear you again. Let's see, we're gonna get it together. We had a little technical stuff earlier today. Nope, I can't hear you. Let me tell you something, y'all. Mercury is so retrograde right now. It is not even funny.
Wait.
Yep, there it is. I got you. Oh, wait, you took it out and it came back.
Me?
Yes.
Now you can hear me?
Yeah. Try and put them in.
Without these, I can't hear you.
Oh, that's funny. Nope.
Oh my God.
Wait, put them in. Now talk.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Jeez. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry, people. We don't really know what's happening here, but how are you doing? And hi to everybody out there. Yes, it's Mercury Retrograde. So we knew that we were taking our chances, playing around with technology right now. So hopefully she'll be kind and generous. Thank you so much.
Yeah. No, these folks understand. These are my, my woo-woo family. So everybody's understanding the Mercury Retrograde.
All right. As long as we all know what we're working with.
Absolutely. So welcome to the show, Vashti. And I'm gonna read like I always do a little bit of people's bios so people can know who my fabulous friends are. So if you're not familiar, Vashti Dubois is the founder and executive director of the Colored Girls Museum in Philadelphia. Prior to creating the Colored Girls Museum, Dubois held leadership positions at a number of organizations over the span of her 30-year career in nonprofit and arts administration. Dubois' work focused primarily on issues impacting girls and women of color at organizations such as the Free Library of Philadelphia, Treehouse Books, the Historic Church of the Advocate, the Children's Arts Carnival in New York City, the Haymarket People's Fund in Boston, Congresso Girls Center, and the Leeway Foundation. In 2015, Dubois opened the Colored Girls Museum to honor the stories, experiences, and history of colored girls throughout the African diaspora. It is the first memoir museum of its kind, offering visitors a multidisciplinary experience in a residential space. Dubois was awarded the Arts and Business Leadership Award for outstanding dedication to women and girls of color and providing agency and visibility for the practices and histories of artists often excluded from the canon. She is currently working on a book about the making of the Colored Girls Museum. Welcome again to the show, Vashti Dubois.
Thank you, Shelley. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I don't even know where to begin. I feel like I should walk people back because I know a lot of the story and I know a lot of my audience does not know you. So I want to make sure that people really know the story because I honestly feel like it is what I don't want to say like it's not miraculous. It's like a real spiritual story is what I feel like it is. It's a real spiritual story. So when I just so you know a little bit of the history of Vashti and myself. So I met Vashti, a really good friend of mine, who some of y'all might know, Ian Friday. And you know, if you're a Tea Party person, meaning Brooklyn Tea Party poetry, that's the world in which I know Ian from. So I met Vashti through Ian because Vashti and Ian went to school together. And at that time, when I met Vash, I don't know when I met you, you were married, but I met you during that time, and I met her husband Al at the time. So that was my whole circle of collective people that I met through Ian, and and I met her husband Al, and Al was amazing, fabulous, funny.
Yep, all of that.
Man, so tell us a little bit about, I guess. What happened, I guess, and how it came to
sure.
Where we are now. Yeah.
So, it's funny because today I forget, I have to work on this pitch for this thing that I'm doing next week. So I was trying to think about just connection. So my husband Al was killed in a car accident 6 years ago. It's really by March 30th of 2021 will be 7 years. And it still feels like it was yesterday. And Al and I actually went to junior high school together in Brooklyn. But we never, ever dated, ever. And I moved to Boston in the mid 90s, in like 1996 or so. I had been in Boston 2 weeks. I was coming down a hill in Jamaica Plain. I saw a Black man in the distance who felt familiar from the distance, but I reminded myself, I don't know anybody in Boston. I just know my one friend in Boston, who's Liz. And so I went back. I was dragging my daughter behind me on some roller skates. And so I was trying to focus on not letting her fall and got within about 4 feet. And sort of forgot that there was somebody that felt familiar in front of me. And I heard my full name, Vashti Dubois. And so for those of you who went to school back in the day, the only people who say your full name are people who have been in a situation where attendance is being taken. So Vashti Dubois. So I knew it was somebody from like one part of my school life. So I looked up and I was like, oh my God, Albert Stewart. And I hadn't seen him in 20 years. Since I graduated from St. Anne's in Brooklyn, and he was a year ahead of me. Mm-hmm. So we stood on the corner in Jamaica Plains and talked for about 2 hours. His son, he'd been married, he was divorced. His son was, I think, 9 at the time. My daughter was 7 at the time. He was picking up his son from school. So we stood on the corner in Jamaica Plain and talked for like 2 hours with our kids jumping up and down behind us. I was like, oh my God, this is divine. Like, this doesn't just happen. I've only been in this state for 2 years. I didn't even remember that he was there. So the universe must have something in mind.
Right.
So we left, we exchanged numbers, and I figured, okay, well, we're going to see. I didn't hear from that dude for 9 months. Could have had a whole baby in 9 months. Dude did not. And the thing is, he also introduced me to what then became my daughter's school because I was looking for another school for her. So I enrolled her in the same school his son was in. I never even ran into him, even though I've been staying with my girlfriend in Jamaica Plain. Eventually, I found a place around the corner from the school.
Okay.
So 9 months later, run into him at an end of year event for the kids. He walks me home. He comes upstairs. We talk, and then he runs out like Cinderella leaving his shoe behind because transportation stops in Boston
Yes, it
at
does.
a certain time. So if you miss your train, you're not going nowhere. So he ran out, and I thought, okay, well, we'll see what happens. So he called me the next day. It was May, and he said, I'd like to take you to a Tina Turner concert at the end of July. It was May. It had already been 9 months. I said, okay, I clearly need to take matters into my own hands. Let me ask this dude out for Father's Day. I did. We did go on our date in July, but by August of that year, we were not only dating, but we were pregnant with my now 22-year-old son.
Wow.
So there you have it. And so, I mean, Al is a singer.
Yes.
He's an incredibly funny human being.
Yes.
He's a fellow Aquarian like me, but he's a January Aquarian. We don't hold that against him.
Yeah.
And after, so we were in Boston, but since we were both artists, we felt like, you know what? It's time for us to go back to Brooklyn because we're artists, and where else should you be if you're artists but in New York City? So we came back to New York. We thought maybe we would be able to buy a house. We're both Brooklyn kids. We grew up in different parts of Brooklyn. So imagine our shock moving back to Brooklyn and realizing, oh shit, we're never, like, we're artists. We're never going to be able to afford to buy anything in Brooklyn. But we had a good friend. They had a place available. We moved into the place in Bed-Stuy. And maybe a year and a half later, that's when the Twin Towers came down. So I think we were in New York. Maybe we were in New York 2 years before that happened. And, if you grow up in New York, you know that Manhattan is an island.
Right.
But I had never experienced Manhattan as an island until September 11th.
Absolutely.
I worked in Harlem. My daughter went to school in Harlem, and our boys were respectively in daycare and school in Brooklyn. And it took me 7 hours to get from Harlem back to Brooklyn the day the towers came down. So after that, it was traumatizing because you get on the subway in Bed-Stuy, you always pass the newsstand. So you see, the alerts were posted. Is it a red alert day? Is it an orange alert day? So getting on the subway was nerve-wracking.
Sure.
So eventually I said to Al, listen, I lived in Philly. I actually kind of have a real love-hate relationship with Philly. But, we're artists, so we may never make a whole lot of money. I do believe that the cost of living is such that we could buy a house there. So he was really not feeling Philadelphia. But I showed him a few prices. And he was like, okay, I'll go look, but I'm not interested. So we came to Philadelphia, we looked, and he was like, okay. And we got a pre-approval, which, those of you who are artists, you understand. We're like, what?
What? Yeah.
Somebody's going to let us buy a house?
Yeah.
Like, do they know who we are?
Right.
So in 2 or 3 weeks, we had been back and forth to Philadelphia probably like 4 times. And so my husband, my late husband, brought me a photograph, a grainy photograph of this house at 4613 New Hall Street. And he said, what do you think of this house? And there was something about it. And, we didn't have cell phones. Now we can take pictures of everything. We can take really cute pictures.
Yeah.
So this wasn't a great photograph, but there was something about it that it was calling. So we came up. It took us 3 times to actually get into the house. We finally came in, and I was like, this is my house.
Wow.
3-story Victorian twin. And, you said this is sort of like, this is like one of those stories, right? It turns out that this house that we eventually purchased was actually the home of a girlfriend of mine from Wesleyan, where I went to school. Because when I had my daughter, I went back to West to finish my undergraduate degree. I had a year and a half left. And I said to myself, you know what? Now's as good a time as any. Went back, met another mom who had a baby who was a month younger than my daughter. And we wound up exchanging babysitting, and that's how we got through. That's how I got through She was a real undergraduate. I was an older undergraduate.
Right.
But that's how we got through. We just went through each other's backyard, exchanged babysitting. And I lost track of her when I moved to Boston. So imagine my shock when we walk in, my daughter sees a photo on the refrigerator and she says, "Mom, doesn't that look like Rosie?" And I say, "Get out of my way and let me look at my house." And my daughter went ahead. She went up the stairs and she went into the child's room. And she came out with these handprints. If you're a parent, you know those corny handprints with like the clay thing, you know. So she brought that, but she also brought this image, this frame. Part of how I like kept myself sane when I was finishing my undergraduate, because I didn't really know what I was doing, having a new baby, trying to be in school, was I started making these picture frames and putting rice and beans and shit on them. I wasn't very good, but I was enjoying myself. So I made a collage for Wanda because she was leaving to go off to Syracuse graduate school. So I made a collage with our daughters, pictures of our daughters. I put their heads on some girls with school bags, because they were babies. But I was like, one day they're going to be in school. Right. And I gave it to her as a gift. When my daughter presented me with these two things, I realized whose house we were in.
Wow.
And it's the first and only time in my life that I fainted. Just slid down the side of, just like it was just, anyway. Yeah. Needless to say, we wind up buying this house. They moved to Vermont. And our daughters grew up in the crib together. Right. So that was the first sort of, the first thing was like meeting Al after 20 years. Yeah. Then this house. And then, we raised our family here. Yeah. He brought the boy, I brought the girl. We collaborated on the third child, who's now 22. Right. And then, like I said, almost 7 years ago now, Al was coming home from a gig, so less than 5 minutes away from the house. He was in a terrible car accident. And, Al was a hard man to live with. If you know Aquarians, I think you sort of fill it in. But when I met Al, it sort of felt like my world kind of reassembled itself, because when you meet somebody from childhood, especially the middle school years, because the middle school years, like, those are not pretty years. Those are like the funky years, like your limbs are not quite, your hair's not quite. So anybody who knows you from that time, you can't really put on airs with them. Like, they knew you when. Right. And so meeting Al again, it was sort of like, I could only be myself. He could only be himself. And it was, and that was really, really powerful, because it forced honesty in a way that you're not always honest when you get into a new relationship. Sure. So I can honestly say, like, Al was my soulmate. Never dated in junior high school. Never occurred to me to date him, because he was a little extra in junior high school.
It is junior high school.
Right. And so when he was killed in this car accident, it was crushing. It was absolutely crushing. And my youngest child, who's really close to his dad, the other two kids, well, my daughter hadn't moved out. My grandson was, I think, 6 or 7 months old at the time. And all I can say about that first year is that it was a fog. Yeah. It was just a fog. But coming into the second year, and one of the things I say to people is that I think in the first year of grief, I think the universe is really generous. She kind of like wraps you in like cotton. So there's like a weird kind of soundproofing. At least that was my experience. To really, I think, sort of like protect you from the intensity of the feeling. But by the second year, it was like being in a dark room. That's the only way I can describe it. And like, you've been in the room for a long time, and then somebody rips off all the curtains and the light is blinding. So in that year, I had to figure something out. And like, what could I do that was going to put me on a path to healing, but also allow me to have some place to put my energy.
Can I stop you for 1 second?
Yep.
Just because I just want to make sure that folks are clear. So why we're giving all this house talk, because I don't know if everybody really understands. The Colored Girls Museum is in Vashti's house.
Yes. That's really important to know.
That is important to know. Yeah. And because I was sitting here and I was like, let me really explain why we're giving so much house background, because the museum is in the house. Continue.
Yes. And let me just say, right? So people were like, why'd you put the museum in your house? And the really simple answer to that is that once I decided that this was what I was going to do, and for years, I had been thinking I wanted to do something for years. It didn't have this name. I didn't exactly know. But once I figured out, okay, this is what I can do. This is all I had. I had this house. And I don't know, so many of us, and this pandemic is certainly making us think about this, right? Mm-hmm. There are things that we want to do, but there are a million reasons why we never do them.
Absolutely.
I don't have the money. I don't have the time. I don't have the place. I don't whatever.
Yeah.
And so I had not done this thing that had been kind of like, I hadn't even allowed myself to think about it fully. Mm-hmm. But once I decided this is the thing, I was like, well, I got this house.
Right.
So I could do it in this house.
Right.
I could turn this house into a museum.
So let me ask you a question before you go on, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm hearing all, I'm getting all the side story from the
yes.
Book. So, so correct me if I'm wrong. Were you not even sure you actually had the house when you started?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So after Al died, the house was actually in foreclosure, went in and out of foreclosure several times. Okay. So I didn't know if I was going to be able to come back from that. And so, when you come to the museum, when we survived this pandemic,
yes,
and you come and you visit her, a detail that you'll notice that some people don't actually notice, but we've kept it, is that there's suitcases on every landing. And those suitcases were actually packed. Wow. Because I really didn't know, but I wanted to be ready. I wanted to be ready for whatever was going to happen. But in the meantime, there was this thing that I could do. Right. And so the Colored Girls Museum opened in something here called the Fringe Festival in 2015. And I invited artists to curate every room in the house, a team of artists, and asked each pair of artists to invite 1 to 5 ordinary Black women. Because the thing about this museum is that this is what I was really thinking about with this space, was how the ordinary stories of Black women and girls never get told. So I used to say, like, Oprah will have a museum, she should. Toni Morrison will have a museum, she should. Michelle Obama, she should. Countless other Black women whose names we know. But if we look at history, one of the things we absolutely know is that ordinary Black women have been at the forefront of everything. From the suffragette movement to the civil rights movement. Ordinary Black women whose names we almost never, ever, ever get to know. Yeah. And so just thinking about my own experiences, I was like, I want to create a circumstance where my ordinary experience, the loss of my husband, the potential loss of my home, but my ordinary life, where like that there's an opportunity to like acknowledge that life, to not be ashamed of that life, to celebrate that life, and to offer that story to other ordinary colored girls, to say like your ordinary life really, really, really does matter. And we all deserve the mission for the Colored Girls Museum is that we are a public ritual for the protection, praise, and grace of the ordinary colored girl. Yeah. So very selfishly, obviously, I was thinking about my own need for protection, praise, and grace, and then the desire to extend that to other ordinary Black women and girls, because I just don't think if we don't give it to ourselves, we're just not going to have it.
Absolutely. And I feel like I remember in the beginnings, like, with the Fringe Fest in the beginning, and I just remember like Ian being so much like, oh, we're getting press. We're getting like, oh, like there's people coming. Like it felt very organically explosive. Like it just was like, this is here and people are showing up, almost very much like if you build it, they will come.
Well, yeah, I mean, I definitely in the beginning, yeah, it was a little crazy because in the beginning, I felt like I said to people, I felt like maybe Noah when he was building the ark, right? He got his instruction, build the damn ark.
Right.
And people were coming by laughing at him, he's bringing in animals 2 by 2. So when we were doing this museum, my sense was, a lot of people were like, what in the hell is she doing?
Mm.
I mean, I was asking myself that, what the hell are you doing? You in a museum in your house? Where you gonna live, girl? What you gonna do? Like, you don't even know if you're gonna have that house. But anyway, you're gonna have like, what are you doing?
Right.
But I felt at a certain point compelled to do it. And shout out to Michael and Ian because they were crazy enough to be like, yeah, that sounds okay. And years later, whenever stuff gets really crazy, I'm like, who told me? Why didn't y'all stop me? Who said it was a good idea for me to put a museum in the goddamn house that I Who said that was a good idea? So yeah, there's so much about it that was just really, really organic. And of course, you remember, and fast. Things happen really, really fast.
So fast.
The year that you were in the Fringe Festival, that was the first Colored Girls Museum Festival. We had no business doing that. No business doing that at all.
And it was fabulous.
Season. It was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
And I remember we had one of these meetings with the Fringe folks, and we were like, yeah, we want to do a party. That's how it started. We're going to do a party. Right. And then Ian and I are heading back to the museum, and he said, you're going to hate me for this. But I think we should do a festival. I was like, a festival? Like, yeah, like a festival. And with my dumb ass, I was like, we should do a festival! Let's do a festival! So much of what the trajectory of this Colored Girls Museum has been organic. And you never know when you do something. I always say, like, do it for yourself. And quite often, if there's something that you feel drawn to do, there are other people who are going to be drawn to that particular experience. Absolutely. You never know. You never know. But, at that time in my life, having experienced loss, I also felt like, life is short. That accident was really unexpected.
Right.
So what is it that you want to do? Like, and do it now, because you really don't know. You don't know how much time you have on this planet. So and sometimes you don't have a playbook. There was no playbook for this. Right. Listen, I don't even like museums. Real talk.
But maybe the reason you don't like museums, like so many of us, is because we also understand museum culture. We also understand, you know what I'm saying? Like if you're in the art world, even, remotely. And it's interesting because for me, while I'm a musician, for several years, I worked at Art Basel magazine. So so I got to really start to see and understand some of the inner workings of the museum, gallery, art world culture. So I can totally understand why you would say what you're saying about not liking museums. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I didn't see myself there as a little girl. I would get headaches looking for myself so hard. We go to the museum on the class trip and I'd be looking because I knew it was an important place. So I was like, where am I in this place? And so, our approach to this museum, as Ian likes to say, we museum differently. Yes. So this is, museums are performative spaces where people just don't call our attention to that. but there's a whole choreography around how you move in a museum.
Mhm.
There's a soundtrack of a museum that you're not necessarily paying attention to.
Right.
And so we really lean into that to really create our own, like, what does a museum do for us?
Mhm.
How can we make a museum that is relatable to the community that we seek to serve? And then also, like, how can a museum be an economic engine? Like, what happens when Black folks go, yo, let me, like, when you, especially Brooklyn is a fantastic example of how a cultural institution will move into a space and then it will create all of this economic opportunity. Then you'll see the bookstores coming. You'll
Right.
see the coffee shop coming. You'll see the tattoo, like it. Cultural institutions create a whole vibe. They attract, they're anchor institutions.
Right.
And
Right.
so what happens when Black folks go, let me make my own anchor institution?
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
And Black folks, our art is always connected to other stuff that we're doing in the world.
Mhm.
Our art never just sits by itself. Our art is always taking care of us. Our art is our church, it's our religion, it's our spirituality. And so we really think about all of that in everything that we do at the Colored Girls Museum.
Absolutely.
We hope that when you come here, this feels like it could be your home.
Right. So let me ask two things. And I know you've had many groups come through, many experiences. What is one experience of like people arriving at your house and their, like what you witnessed them feeling, or like what has been said to you, or, I'm sure there's been many gratitudes, but what is something that like stands out for you in terms of like that knowing, like, yes, I'm doing what I should be doing?
There's a lot, and every time somebody asks me that question, I remember something else.
Mm-hmm.
There was, in the beginning, we were typically only open on Sundays.
Mm-hmm.
And then gradually we couldn't accommodate the number of people who wanted to come. So we started to open up. And so we weren't quite there yet, but I got an email from two sisters who were ministers. And I think they were both in Baltimore, but they had been part of the same class. So they had, they were ministering in different places.
Mm-hmm.
And they were young sisters, at least for me, they were like in their late 30s, early 40s.
Mm-hmm.
And so because they were ministers, I said, I'm going to open for y'all.
Right.
So they came and we were doing urgent care, that show.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And so urgent care, we had taken the name of the spaces you might find in a hospital, and we asked the artists who were submitting to really reimagine those spaces, because this was the Colored Girls Museum's hospital. So there was a pain management suite, there was a triage room, there was a urgent care wing, there was an apothecary, and so on. And so I took these two sisters on a tour. And the tour, I started them on the top floor, ended on the bottom floor. And I ended them with, I can't remember the sister's name, but the song is Lullaby. And I think it's Tasha, but I can't remember her last name. Beautiful song.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended their tour with that piece. And they both started crying. Now, people cry a lot here for different reasons. But, then they just started talking about how hard it was to, minister to Black folks while also trying to imagine what their own lives were going to be as Black women. Like, would they find partners? Would they have children? Like, how could they do this really demanding work, really, work that they felt called to do and passionate about? How was that going to live alongside, like, being Black women in the world,
Right.
like, who want to have a full experience of yourself? And, all I could say to them was, I have to believe that the work that we're called to do does not require that Black women sacrifice their lives.
Come on.
Like that's not that's not the requirement, and that in fact, to be fully available to a congregation that is probably going to be predominantly Black women, you have to be available to yourself. Like you gotta, it is essential that you be available to yourselves, because otherwise you cannot do this work. That's not necessary. That's not good. You're in the Colored Girls Museum's hospital right now. She made a hospital, right? Her own social care hospital. So, take what you need from this and like take that back with you into the world, because I believe that every time we take up an exhibition, we consider ourselves, we're an ongoing, public health advocacy firm over here for the ordinary Black woman and girl. That's what we're up to. And, when they left that day, it was another reckoning. It was another moment where I said, okay, sometimes I don't know. Sometimes none of us know why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
Sometimes you think that you have nothing really specific to offer. I was like, y'all are ministers. You should be good, right? You got a hotline. But it was a moment to remember.
I always say, like, it's that thing of who's going to heal the healer.
Exactly. And so that's among many moments that sort of really called me back to like being okay with the fact that I may not always know why we're doing this work, because sometimes you don't know, but you just have to do the work.
Just have to do the work.
You just have to do the work.
Well, that's the artist's life. Oftentimes, it's like
yes, it is.
You always know, but you have to do it. Like it's
just have
that
to do
call. That's why we're here right now. That's why I'm talking to the screen right now.
Yes.
Seriously, that was the spirit call. Like when COVID happened and I didn't know what I was gonna do, and I just listened, and this is what came. So here I am.
And sometimes I say all the time, Black women have a God complex, and sometimes we're being called forth to do something.
Yes.
And we just really want to be doing some other things.
Yeah.
That's not what we want to do at all. So we got to get the tap.
Yeah, and then you gotta move.
Yeah, you gotta answer.
So of course, because I'm looking at the time and I'm like,
Yep.
At it, but I really want to talk about, because we are in these COVID times and the museum is not open right now. So is there a plan to reopen? And I know we're kind of all just sort of at the whim of whatever the universe says, but at the moment, is what's the thought about opening your doors again, or are you in that mode?
Yeah. So there are a couple of things and I think, as you just said, right, this is a moment where full stop. Yeah. Whatever you were doing, like you're not doing that thing anymore.
Right.
And then after you finish, kicking the can down the road, eating all the ice cream, all the food, all the things. Then there's the question sort of like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do now?
Mm-hmm.
How are we going to pivot? Was it pivot or perish?
Yes.
So at present, we actually have a campaign that is on our Instagram page, and it's called For a Time Like This, where we've invited curators, as we would if you were curating in the museum, using the same practice, to invite 6 to 16 ordinaries to submit photos of objects that have been significant to them for a time like this. So what do you have in your hand right now? What's taking care of you right now? What's the thing you keep returning to? Take the best photo you can take of it. Tell us why it's significant, and give us a little bio about who you are. So if you look at the Color Girls Museum Instagram page, you'll see it's really it's powerful in its simplicity, and the entries are so varied, and the stories are really so very beautiful. Also, right before all hell broke loose, we actually got funding from the Knight Foundation to begin work on the Color Girls Museum in virtual reality and augmented reality. So this is something we have been trying to do for many years. And so getting the funding really created that possibility. But of course, our partners are in Arizona, so we haven't really been able to move on that either.
Right.
We're doing the bits and parts of it that we can. Right now, our thought, we, like everybody else, we're looking at where's this pandemic going to take us this fall and this winter.
Yeah.
Our hope is that, we'll be able to open sometime in spring of 2021. But we're going to be, taking the temperature. And obviously, our constituency is primarily, Black women and girls. And so we're going to it's going to be an abundance of caution.
Absolutely.
As we move to open, to just make sure that when we open, we're safe, our guests are safe, and people can come and have a really beautiful experience without having to worry about whether or not they're going to be okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. Man, I can't believe, every time I do this with somebody, and I'm always like, oh yeah, it'll be like a half an hour, and I'm like, it'll be like 45 more minutes. And I feel like I have a whole other list of questions here, but it's okay. I think we got to the good stuff, and I think that's most important. So I just want to say for everybody who's watching on Instagram, the Color Girls Museum is at the Color Girls Museum. Also the website, thecolorgirlsmuseum.com. You can go up there now. Right now on the site, I know you have songs of Toni Morrison up right now.
We do.
Yeah.
We do. So that was actually, so she needs to come. I mean, we spent a year asking for Toni Morrison's blessings and just holding her in the space. And so that was actually transitioned us to our Instagram campaign, because the spring show that people didn't get to see was Psalms of Toni Morrison for a time like this.
Wow.
So we removed Psalms and we just left for a time like this. And so the Instagram campaign is not listed on our website. You'll see Psalms of Toni Morrison, but then you should just go to Instagram. And thank you for reminding me that we need to take that. We need to put up the next thing.
Okay.
Awesome. We didn't do that.
Y'all get there.
We'll get there. We're a little slow.
But if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, I have all of the the Color Girls Museum info is in the description, so you can go there and you can see it, and you can get in, go to the site and check everything out, go to the Instagram page and get into that as well. I
have one question for you before we go.
Absolutely.
So, what's holding you right now? What's your object?
I have, in the spirit of the Color Girls, I bought myself during this pandemic a yoni steam seat.
Oh.
So, yeah. So for those who are not familiar with the yoni steam seats, it is a box that basically you just sit on, and it has a hole in the top. Mine has a beautiful heart-shaped hole at the top. And inside of the box, you put herbs. So you put whatever kind of cleansing herbs to help, keep your yoni happy. And you put it in your box and you steam your yoni. And
so you would be sending us a picture of your yoni box.
I will totally send you a picture of my yoni box. And I talked about it early on because what some folks know who've been watching this show from the beginning, when I first started Punanny Politixxx, or when I first conceptualized it, really, the thought originally it was going to be a podcast. It wasn't even going to be a video. This was before the pandemic. And it was really all going to be about womb wellness. And I was just really going to be talking about, because I'm going through I'm working to release my fibroids right now. So that's one of the reasons why I bought the steam box. But, so it was going to be all about womb wellness. It was going to be all the things. It was going to be fertility, for, fibroids, pregnancy. It was going to be menopause. It was going to be all the things. And not that I won't ever, have those things coming back, but, as time marched on, meaning, literally when March happened and everything happened, and then, we watched our brothers and sisters, getting killed again and again. And we were in this uprising. I said, oh, well, I guess Punanny Politixxx has really got to get into the politics. But I also wanted to make sure I was sharing, like I said, my fabulous friends and, people that in my art life that I felt like more people should know. And you're one of those people, and, others who have been on my show are those people. So, and really, as you are taking your time to acknowledge, as you say, the ordinary Black woman and girl, like, I just wanted to make sure that people knew my fabulous Black woman and girl friends.
That's amazing. You might have to send a picture, miss.
No, I'm totally going to send you a picture. You got it.
I love it. Oh
my box is engraved. It says on the front, Shelley's Yoni Seats. Like, listen.
I love it. Oh my goodness. That's fabulous. That's fabulous.
And what even greater was the fact that I found a brother that he's in Tennessee, and he makes all this fabulous like woodworking stuff. And so I was able to support Black business, and that even made it even better.
I love it.
I know, right?
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for having me on the show.
Absolutely.
I really, really appreciate it. And, those of you who joined us, thank you for tuning in.
Absolutely. So we'll talk soon. Have a good night. And be well, be safe.
All right. You too.
Right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh my goodness. Thank you all, everybody, for staying with us, tuning in. My usual, I'm over time. But, I have to stop saying that, because clearly I'm not over time. Like, this is just the time. This is just what it is. So just want to thank Vashti Dubois again. Again, all the information about the Color Girls Museum is in the description. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, you can check that out there. But again, it's easy. It's thecolorgirlsmuseum.com or IG at the Color Girls Museum. So totally check that out. And as usual, we can't leave without me honoring a sister, as I always do, who we have lost to the hands of, police or misogyny, white supremacy, whatever the case may be. So I have to say, as we talk about in these times, I was going through my email list. I send out email blasts, and sometimes I go back. If you have an email listserv person, you know what it is. You can go, you can see who checked out your emails, right? So there was an email of somebody that checked out my blast, who is an art presenter in Seattle. And I just was like, oh, let me go see what these folks are doing, because I'm just kind of interested to see what art presenters are doing right now in this time. Like, how are people, bringing art into the world? How are they doing it? Are they distancing people? What's happening? So I went to the page of the company that he works for. I'm sorry, I can't remember it right now, but it just said, as some folks, some pages, this organization is standing with Black Lives Matter, and we're standing with the families of. And it listed, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, but then there was also a name that came up that was Charleena Lyles. And I had not heard Charleena's name before. So it moved me to investigate, who is Charleena? So she was a Black woman who was killed in Seattle in 2017. And I know I got this little small type, so I'm not gonna, read everything. I always do all these long bullet points, but then it's a lot. But she was 30. She was a mother of 4. She was killed on June 18th, 2017 by the Seattle police. She was 5 months pregnant at the time of her death, and no, her child did not live. So Charleena, she had, what some people might say, had a hard childhood. She lived as a homeless person for a while. She was then, got a shift in her life, I should say, when she got help from a program in Seattle called the Thrive program, which helped her secure a steady job. And so she was able to then, get a job. She was also able at that time to seek counseling for depression that she was suffering, from being homeless and also being in an abusive relationship. She was also concerned at the time about her children possibly being taken away by Child Protective Services, which was contributing to her anxiety and depression. But again, with the help of having a job through the Thrive program, she was able to move into her own place with her children. But it also, she confided in her family that she didn't necessarily feel safe in the apartment complex that she was living in. So I understand that, it's funny. I feel like I've done so many jobs. I've done a lot of things. So as people know, or some people know, I'm a Reiki practitioner. And I was working here in Brooklyn with an organization. I'm not going to name it. I'll just say I was working here in Brooklyn with an organization. And it was housing people who were formerly homeless, and in recovery. But what was happening was that there wasn't a lot of enforcement around people staying clean. So then sometimes things would happen and people would start to feel unsafe who were, there and not wanting to be in that environment. But it's kind of became a catch-22 because you have your own place, you're living on your own, you're not on the streets. But then you're in an environment that you don't necessarily feel safe in. So I really resonated with that because as we are, we seek to create programs to help folks off the streets. We seek to create programs to help people to better their lives, but then we don't really give them like a full peace of mind inside of those spaces. And it just can sometimes become another space of anxiety. And I'm just saying that from like personal, conversations that I've had with folks that were living, I should say, inside of the place where I was working at the time. So having said all that, on June 5th, days before her death, she got into a domestic dispute with her former partner, and the police were called at that time. When the police arrived, she was armed with scissors and she was calling them devils. And at that time, that's when her family realized that she might be, having a real mental health crisis. She was arrested and put in jail for a few days. When she was released from jail, 4 days later, she called the police again to report a burglary at her house. When the police arrived, they found her brandishing a knife and they shot her 7 times with her children, with 3 of her children in the house with her. And of course, and I hate to say of course, but of course, the officers were not charged. And I know people want to say, well, she was holding a knife, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, knife? Okay. And I'm always of the mind of like, whatever happened to like, why you got to shoot people dead? Like if somebody's holding a knife and you really feel like you're in that much danger, if you really feel like you got to shoot somebody, could you shoot somebody in a place that they will live? If, just take them to stop them and not to kill them. So when I read this story and, I was already stopped at the fact that she was killed with, at 5 months pregnant. That was already enough for me. Like I had to really like take a pause and step away for a second. So Charleena Lyles, we are lighting this candle for Charleena and her family and her children. Because, like last week when I was talking about Corinne Gaines, her son was in her arms when they shot her. So here we have another sister whose children are in the house and one in her belly. So I'm lighting my incense because my candle is down deep. We're lighting this candle for Charleena and her children, her family. And just going to keep saying her name. And, I hate to always be this way, but I always, I have to think like, if the police walked in on a white lady holding a knife, they probably talk her down, right? You don't hear about so many white ladies getting shot by the police. That's all. So again, sending my love and to Charleena's family, to her children at this time. And yeah, we're going to keep honoring our sisters. We're going to keep honoring our sisters. And I'm glad that I was able to, find out about her and say her name, because I know that she's probably somebody that a lot of people, had not heard of. So with that, I'm going to wind it down. I have to say, what is my always thing? I don't know what date we are now, but the 16th, boom. You got 15 days to do the census. Get the census in, people. Get the census in, get the census in, get the census in. I've been saying it all the time. Just do it. Get it in. Just do it. It's simple. It's easy. It's fast. As always, if you're watching on YouTube or if you're not watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the YouTube channel so that we can do some more fabulous things on YouTube. You need like 1,000 subscribers to like do anything super funky fresh on YouTube. So subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow me. It's the Black Bush YouTube channel. Follow Punanny Politixxx on Punanny Politixxx on IG at Punanny Poly TV on IG and Twitter. And I'm super excited. I don't know who caught the 3rd episode of Punanny Politixxx, but that was our show with Kat Dyson and the senator. I put set. Oh my God, I have a total typo, but you know what I'm saying. The Senator Pat Spearman from Nevada was on. Senator Pat is coming back. Listen, I'm so excited about Senator Pat coming back. She's coming back right in time to talk some real talk to you about this election. So tune in on the 22nd. We will be here. I believe we're going to be on at 8:30 that night. I'll let you know for sure. I might actually be on at 8, but either way, I'm going to let y'all know we are going to be back with the senator. Yeah, she's amazing. If you're not sure, if you missed episode 3, you can go back. You can check it out on YouTube. That was a great show with Kat Dyson and Pat Spearman. And we had such a good time that night. So I just want to thank you all again. Again, the time just goes by so fast. I'm always sort of amazed at how fast the time goes by. But I really appreciate and love y'all. Really, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow us, tell a friend, and be good to yourselves. Be safe, be well. And if you are going out there doing early voting in these states that have long lines, really prepare. Get your good shoes, bust out that cooler, get that, that concert chair that you couldn't use all summer. You can bring it to the polls. You know what I'm saying? You can use that chair. So do what you got to do, vote with friends, have somebody you can be there, talk to, whatever it takes. Because we're going to get this thing done. I really and truly believe that. So with that, I just want to say I love you and carry on and have a great weekend, everybody. Bye.
When you recognize you're on the ground, you can get up.